Okay, everybody, welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue on here for our final time together. So let's go ahead and close these main files. And let's open our terminal window again. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to create our database. What I'd like you to do is load up this file in your browser. I put a link in the chat. And scroll down to step number 3. So step number 3 is this step right here, where it says export database URL. We're going to do the next 3 steps, to create our migration. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to copy export database URL, and then I'm going to come over to my terminal here. Make sure you are in the Tools app folder when you run these commands. I'm going to go ahead and paste my database URL. The database tooling uses the database URL environment variable to know where to put the database. That's why we have to set the environment variable. Then I'm going to come back over to here. I'm going to copy SQLX database create. I'll go ahead and paste that into here. And it will create the database right here in the Tools app folder. So right here in Tools app now, I have a SQLite database. Now I need to take those changes, that color model, and set that up in the database as a table. So I'll come back over here and I'm going to do SQLX migrate add color. Copy that. Make sure once again you are in the Tools app folder. I'm going to paste. And you can see it's added the migration here. Now this has not added it to the database yet. When we run the Leptos application, the migration macro that you saw will apply the migrations to the database. All we have to do are define the migrations, and then they'll be applied when we go to run the program. So if you open the migrations folder and open up the SQL file, we then have to put in our code that we want to have migrated. So if you come to here and copy this and paste this into here, we'll now have our database definition. Like I said, it's not really an object relational mapper. It's a little migration tool, but it's all very manual. But that's okay. Go ahead and copy and paste that into there. I'll pause for a second while you do that. And then the next time we go to run this, it'll actually create the table and insert the data for us. Don't forget the main file has the migrate piece here, where it'll apply the migrations automatically for you. So what we did in this case was we came in and we created an environment variable, created the database, add a migration script, we copied SQL into the migration, and now we're good. So we should be able to do our server actions, talk to our database. All of that should be good. We've added the repository code, the model code, the migration script. We've created the database, and we've updated the main RS file to have all of the database stuff in it. With that said, what we're going to do now is turn our attention back to coding color tool. So go ahead for me and open up the color home component that we created before. So go ahead and open up color home. All right. So now at the top, we're going to bring in the all colors, a pen color. Are you running in the code space or are you running on your local machine? Okay, on the code. Maybe we'll go ahead and run my code. Make sure my code compiles. Cargo, Leptos, serve. And let's see if I'm having any issues myself. Let's see. Let's see. Hold on 1 second. Let me, did I leave off a step? I believe I did. Let me go to cargo toml. All right, so this is the cargo toml for Tools App Final. This is the one for Tools App. Let's do a quick comparison between them and make sure everything is good. We didn't leave anything out, what have you. Okay, so we have our packages, our crates, our dependencies. Version numbers might be slightly different. Okay, see config if here? We need to have config if added over here. Cargo makes it real simple. All I have to do is copy this over to here, and it'll automatically pick it up. See how the cargo stuff is running? So copy over config if, HTTP, Leptos, Leptos meta, Actix, router, WASM, bindgen, Serde is good. SQLX, we don't have the optional turned on. Let's copy the optional here and apply that to our SQLX. And that makes sense actually, because if you think about it, we're compiling both the server side and the client side. And go ahead and grab the optional here too. Looks like I left that off. I apologize. Go ahead and set both of those to true. Now, down here for our server side rendering, we need to copy these. And I think I had these in the instructions, but we skipped over the steps. So go ahead and copy those over for me. So we copied over the SQLX and UUID dependencies to our server-side renderer. And I think we're probably good for everything else after that. Gotcha. I think we're good. Okay. So let me go ahead and recompile mine and make sure we're all set. In addition to doing the cargo add from the command line, you can definitely copy and paste from the cargo toml files back and forth. In fact, in the instructions I had here to copy and paste that originally, we did it from the command line, but copy and paste, and then of course there's the SSR in the feature section. Okay, we'll let it finish building here, then we'll proceed. All right. Ah, perfect. It built. Thank you so much for speaking up, Kim. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead now. And one of the tricky things with frameworks is that there's usually a lot of configuration, and one piece of the configuration, if it's off, like the whole thing breaks. People experience this a lot in things like Angular, which used to be a lot more configuration heavy than it is now. One thing would be off in your Angular app and it wouldn't build, and it was just some little configuration piece somewhere in the code. Your cargo toml file for Leptos is where you're going to be setting up all of this configuration stuff. Okay. Make sure on your database file that you have set the path to be the path to the SQLite file inside your Tools app folder. So your Tools app folder should be where the SQLite file is located. So my SQLite file is under Tools app. Okay, so you should see that underneath Tools app. And make sure you update this path to reflect this path. So for example, if I'm inside my Tools app, I could type in pwd, and there's my working folder, or there's my folder for Tools app. I can copy that and then paste that folder right into here like this, and it'll find that database. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and proceed here. So go ahead and come back over to the color home component. Up here at the top, we're going to say use crate, repositories, color repository. Go ahead and bring in all colors, a pen color, and remove color. And then down here, we're going to set some things up. Now, if we were doing a multi-day class here, we would get much deeper into working with actions and stuff like that. I've got a couple of interesting things over in the car tool app that you can go back and review later. But for our limited time here together, we're going to just focus in on some basics to get data from the server, render it on the client, so on and so forth. So we're going to say let a pen color, and we'll say create server action. We'll turbo fish it, and we'll say a pen color. And then we'll do a let remove color create server action. Turbo fish it, and we'll say remove color. Now, the really cool thing about this is I don't have to write a bunch of AJAX calls and stuff to call back to the server to do all of my REST API operations. In fact, the way that this is going to work with the server action is essentially Leptos makes a bunch of post requests back to the server to call the different functions. So when you're looking at that color repository and you're looking at those server actions, those are not traditional REST API endpoints. It's a special mechanism that Leptos coordinates, where either you're calling the function locally or you're calling the function from the client over an HTTP connection. But Leptos handles all the details of that connection. So here we're just going to say create server action, and it's going to take care of how it gets to that server action for us, whether it's server-side rendering or client-side rendering. Keep in mind when you're building these isomorphic type applications, the details of how you get to the server code a lot of times are handled by the framework. So you're not having to deal with, am I on the server running this code or am I on the client running this code? That functionality is provided by the framework itself. Now we're going to come down to here, and we need to create a color resource that will actually download all those colors for us. So we're going to say let color resource equal to create resource. And then we're going to do move. And we need to give it some dependencies. So when do I want the color resource to like refresh the colors? I'm going to specify those dependencies through a closure that returns a tuple, where the tuple is the sequence of dependencies that can trigger a refresh to occur. So for example, append color dot version dot get. So the version is actually a signal that gets incremented whenever append color is called. So when that signal changes, that's going to tell the color resource, oh, we did an append operation. Let's do a refresh from the server. We'll say remove color dot version dot get. So that's going to be the closure. So if we do an append or remove, that's going to be a signal to the client to the color resource. Oh, we need to refresh these colors. Then we're going to specify another closure where we say all colors, like that. So go ahead and wire up our color resource. So the server actions will go and modify the data. The color resource refreshes our colors based upon those server actions executing. Okay. Okay. So now that I've got all of this, now what I need to do is wire up a color list and a color form. So let's create two new components. We'll go ahead and create color list.rs and go ahead and create another file called color form. If you want to, just wire up a couple of empty components for the moment, and we'll go ahead and get these wired up into the system. So we'll say use Leptos star, pub function, color form. I'm just going to copy that. I'll come over to color list and paste that in. There we go, color list. Once you've got color list and color form set up, then go ahead and come into mod and do pub mod color list and pub mod color form. So go ahead and bring in your two modules like that for me. I'll pause for a second here while you do that. Okay, next step. Let's do our color form first, just for fun. Okay, let's do our color form first. So at the top here, go ahead and say use Leptos router action form. The action form is a cool piece of functionality in Leptos. It's a form that can work client side or server side. So it's always possible to build a Leptos application that doesn't do WebAssembly. It doesn't do any client side rendering at all. It just does everything server side. You can also, of course, then have the client side too. Action form is cool in that it works on both sides. It'll work on the server side code and the client side code. So now I'm going to come into here and say use crate, models, color, color, and then use crate, repositories, color repository, append, color. Go ahead and bring those two things in for me, please. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to set up color form so that it can receive an append color action that we can call from the action form to do the appending of the color. So we're going to add a parameter here called append color, and it will be of type action, append color, which is the input type. The result that we get back will be a result type, the result enum if you're familiar with that. The OK type is going to be the actual color that was added. The error type is going to be the server function error type, like this. So go ahead and add this parameter to the color form. And then we'll implement our view. All right, so go ahead and start with that, and then we're going to put our form inside of it. Ignore the line going through action form. We're going to add the form content here in a moment. Okay, next step. We're going to say label, name, input type equal to text, name equal to name, and close off our label. Then we'll have another label. This will be the hex code. Input type equal to text, name equal to hex underscore code. Label, and then we'll have a button, type equal to submit, and it'll say add color. All right, so go ahead and wire up your action form. It'll look like that when you're done. I'll pause for a second while you type out all the little HTML elements real quick. What's cool about this is you'll notice that the append color is gonna, or the action form is gonna be able to read the input fields for us. And it's gonna connect the name of the input field to the parameter that we're gonna pass into the server-side code. In fact, let me open the color repository to the side here real quick so you can see this. So if you take a look here at this server-side repository code, you'll see how the name and name hex code there lines up with these parameters here. So when we fire off this append color, this is going to populate these fields with the data collected from the form. All right. Go ahead and update your code for that. I'll give you another minute or two, and then we're going to go take care of color list. Then we'll put it all together and run it. Okay. Give you another 30 seconds here. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at how to do the color list. The color list is actually going to be a lot more involved to display this. A lot more is going to have to be added to the code base. So let's go ahead and turn our attention over to color list, and let's take a look at that. So up here at the top, we're going to have to import some stuff. We have everything created that we need except for one thing. What I'd like you to do is expand out your components folder here. In the components folder, not inside of Color Tool, not inside of Parent Child, but inside the components folder, create a new file. I'd like you to call that file errors. We'll call it error fallback. So go ahead and call it error fallback.rs. And we are going to copy and paste some code for this because there's a lot of little pieces of code here, which will be very easy to lose a lot of time on if we make a typo. What I'd like you to do is come down to Tools App Final. If you go under the components folder, you'll see an errors fallback file. Go ahead and copy the content of that code and copy it into our error fallback. Notice that the one in CarTool has an S, but the one in Tools App Final has an S, but the one that we're using does not have an S. So just simply click on this one in the Tools App Final, copy the content, and put it in the singular error fallback inside of our Tools App project that we're working on together. So go ahead and copy that over. Okay, Once you copy that over, I'd like you to update the mod file here and go ahead and bring that in. So pub mod error fallback. I'll pause for a second while you pull that into the system. All this does is display error messages if it can't connect to the resource. You'll see how this will fit into our code in a moment. But go ahead and just copy that over for me. Okay, cool. So now that we've got the error fallback configured in, that's going to allow us to go over to the color list and be able to import that into the color list, because we'll need that for the loading of the color resources from the server. I'm going to go ahead and close this mod rs and close these two files. Come back over to here. We're going to say use Leptos router, and we'll do action form. Then we'll do use crate, components, errors, or error fallback, and then error fallback, and use crate models color, and use crate repositories, and bring in the remove color. I'll pause for a second, let you kind of bring those in at the top, and then we can focus in on building out the color list and the color list item components. Okay. On the color list here, we'll say color resource. We're going to have two of those versions that we're paying attention to. So this tuple here represents the data type of those dependencies that we specified in color home. So here in color home, how I had two of these version gets, those are of type usize. So we'll specify usize here. Then we'll have result, which will be a vector of colors. That's the actual colors coming back from the server. And then a server function error if something goes wrong. Okay, so go ahead and define our color resource. I'll pause for a second while you add that code. Did I have a typo in there? Vector color. Okay. All right. Then after color resource, I'll need to receive the remove color function, because we're going to have action remove color, and we'll have result, and then we'll say server function error. So go ahead and add that for me. Okay, So now that I've got color resource and remove color, now what I need to do is start to build out my view here to display those colors and wire up all of these actions. So to get started, let's come down to our view macro and let's wire up some pretty cool stuff here. So essentially, Leptos provides to us things like transitions and error boundaries so that if these asynchronous operations fail, they can fail gracefully. So for example, there's a transition component, seeing it N, transition component where I can give it a fallback. So if the transition doesn't work out for us, I can say move, view, and we can say loading. So basically, if we haven't loaded up the data yet, we can display this and then close off our transition. Then we can have an error boundary to handle errors that occur. So we'll say fallback. And this is where we're going to assign the error fallback. Okay. Then inside of here, we're going to have our unordered list. So go ahead and add that view macro with the transition. So it's got a loading while we're waiting for stuff to load, an error boundary, catch errors, and then the unordered list, which we haven't populated with anything quite yet. Okay. Give you another minute here. We've got 2 functions left to write, and then we should be done, other than just calling color list and color form from the color tool. Okay. Next step. Up here, we're going to say let color list view equal to move. The return type for the closure here is going to be an option result view, and that underscore is we're ignoring the type there for that. So if this is a result, the view is the success, the underscore would be the error type. Then we're going to come into here. That should be color underscore list underscore view. And we're going to say color resource. And then, so once we get the colors, we'll get a reference to the vector of colors. And then we'll say colors dot iter. And that should be that right there. Colors dot iter dot map color. And then we're going to have a view here that's going to display the color here in a moment. And then we'll say dot collect view. There we go. Okay. So what this is essentially doing is color list view is going to use the color resource to go out and get the color data. It's going to receive a reference to a vector of colors. We're going to take that vector of colors, iterate over it, take each color, pass it into the view macro, and then basically collect the view that we create for each color. And then we'll take that view and we're going to display it. And we're going to call it from here. We'll say color list view. Now we're not quite done yet. We've got to build out this piece here. But go ahead and build out this code for doing the getting the colors, iterating over them, mapping them into a view, so on and so forth. Okay. Now that we have that in place, I'll give you another 30 seconds to type that out real quick. It can be a little tricky with all the pipes and ambersands and parentheses and dots, curly braces. All right. The last piece that we need to code here, and then we'll do a big review of everything, is we need to write the code here for viewing the color and implementing the action button for doing the delete. Do that. Also, too, can't forget, make sure you decorate color list here with the component macro. Now, I'm going to come into here and say component, pub. Well, actually, we don't even need to mark it pub. It just needs to be function. Color list item. And color list item is going to receive a color. It's also going to receive that remove color action. There's no return value from the for the result. And then we'll have our server function error. There we go. And we'll go ahead and do the impl into view. All right, go ahead and wire up that color list item component for me. No, we're not going to put this inside of parentheses, curly braces. We're going to implement the color list item down here. Thank you, though, for pointing that out. Okay. For the view macro, it's going to look like this. We'll have our list item. Then we're going to have an action form where the action is equal to remove color. And then we're going to have an input type equal to hidden, name equal to ID, prop value equal to color.id. Then we're going to have color.name, color.hexcode, and then a button type submit. There we go. So go ahead and add the view macro for that. And then, of course, we'll have to reference that down here. And I'll just go ahead and throw that in real quick. Color list item. We'll need to clone the color so that the color list item receives its own struct instance, if you want to call it that. And we'll say remove color equal to remove color. Okay, so I updated the code on 36 and implemented color list item. I'll give you like two or 3 minutes here to finish updating your code. And then all we have to do is call this from color home and we're all set. Hopefully we're all set anyways. So you'll notice I used an action form there, even to display the list so that I could have that delete button there inside the form. Okay. Over here on color form, which I'm going to open to the side, I'm going to come into here and I'm going to bring in those two components. So use create components, color tool, color form, and color list. Okay, so I've got color form and color list up here. Down here, below the header, I'll say color list, say color resource equal to color resource, remove color equal to remove color, then color form, and we'll have a pen color, and there we go. Let's see what it's complaining about for color form. All right, I'll pause for a second. That's odd. It's not picking that up. Is that because of my compilation error here? Well, I'll wait for a second, let you finish updating color list, then we'll dive into whatever our error is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up color form. Let's see if I made a typo or something in here. So color form. Oh, I left off my hashtag component. Ah, there we go. Now it's happy. And color resource unused variable, it's used right down here. That's weird. Let me go ahead and see if this builds. It built. It's weird that it's complaining it's an unused. Must be, the linter must be out of sync. Let's go ahead and open this up, see if it loads. If I go to color tool, there are my colors. There we go. It works. If I were to add the color and refresh, it's still there in the database. Delete. Pretty cool, right? All right. Let me push that up real quick. Not too bad. We got an actual database working here. Server side, client side code. If I run this again, if I click on color tool and I load the page from the server and I say view page source, you should see the colors. See the colors listed there? Those are the actual colors rendered on the server. If I go to the home page and reload, you'll see really nothing there. I'm sure the home's on there somewhere, but there's really nothing there. Yeah, welcome to Leptos. Now, if I click on color tool after I've already loaded the home from the server, you'll see, let's see, hold on, did I click on the right thing? Let's go to here. View. Oh, you know what the problem is? I can't check it with view page source because view page source goes back to the server. I'm gonna have to do it over here on the network tab. So if we go to network here, right? If I reload this and go to here and go to response, there we go. You can see here is the server rendered page. So there's the menu, welcome to Leptos, right? If I click on color tool, all you see is the all colors execute. There's no other rendered page. Now, if I reload this from the server, now you'll see there's the colors pre-rendered on the server. Actually, it's not. Yeah, it's loading is what we get. Loading is what we're getting on the server. So it would say loading and then finish the fetch operation on the client side. Anyways, you can see where you have server rendering going on, and then things then become all client side code at that point, except for the data operations, which have to talk back to the server. So there's the append color, all colors. There's the remove, followed by the refresh. Okay. Now, before we wrap things up here, I'm going to go over to the Tools app final. And let me do the cargo Leptos serve. So the extra piece that the Tools app final has, that the one that we created does not, is there's also a car home. And in the car home, you can click like on editing a car. You can modify the car, click save, and it saves it. You could add a car. You can delete a car, so on and so forth. To put this together, let me go into that project. In the components folder, there's an extra folder called Car Tool. In the Car Tool folder here, you'll see car home, car form, car table. The challenge with this particular component is that the table is an editable grid. So I have a view row component, which displays view rows. I have an edit row component that displays edit rows. And then I've got the car table itself, which basically iterates over the cars and then either displays the edit row or the view row, depending upon which car is being edited. Which car is being edited is determined by a signal called edit car ID. Anyways, down here is the overall framework of the table with the car rows inside the T body, and then the logic here for handling all of this. The challenge in this case was I couldn't use an action form, because an action form can only handle one kind of action. But I have this whole table, which would generally necessitate the form tags being outside the table, because the table, the TR, the TDs, the T heads and T foots and T bodies and all that are very strict on what can be a parent or a child and stuff. So you can't insert form elements in the middle of a table structure. You could put a form inside of a TV, but you couldn't have like a form on the outside of a TR. So I wasn't really able to make use of the action form to do my various actions. So I had to try a couple of other techniques to make it all work correctly the way that you saw. For example, on the edit row, I create signals for each of the form fields. And then down here, I connect into prop value to set the field, and the on input to handle typing into the field to capture the data out of it. And then when you click save, it runs this function, which executes the on save car, which is a callback. And then you pass a car into it out of the car edit row. Okay. Now, the only thing I don't really like about this code is I have an unwrap in there. Really, you'd want to handle that a little better than calling unwrap, actually handling the error, but I do have an unwrap in there. Up here, for the edit car, we simply click on the button and output the car ID for the one for editing or the one for deleting. Over here in the car home, the edit car ID is actually an option string. So you can use options as part of your signal. So you could have a none value or you could have an actual value. I do create some resources for like the pulling the data down in the append car and all that. But I also do something kind of interesting in here. For my save car and my delete car, I actually take the, what am I looking for? Oh, for the replace and the remove, I create server actions inside the function and then dispatch the server action manually. So instead of taking the server action and putting it as a parameter or an argument into the action form, I dispatch the action myself. And then once the replace and the remove have completed, then I have an effect where I tell the car resource to go ahead and refetch automatically. So for the add car, I was still able to hook it into the resource and use the action form in the car form component. But because I'm wiring all of these up as callbacks, I can't create a server action out here and call it as a and dispatch it inside of these callback functions or inside of these closures. So for that, I had to move the action creation in here. Well, when I moved the action creation in here, I could no longer use it as a dependency up here. So I used an effect which basically runs a side effect after the state has changed. So in this case, after the state has changed for the replace car get version, it'll run this code and trigger the car resource to refetch. So what happened up here automatically when this changed, I had to write a little bit of code to do it more manually so I could do it inside of this function here. So you could take a look at a little bit more flexible approach to organizing your event handlers and things like that in your code.